Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is our show for Tuesday, October 18th, but it's also a YouTube video. And I know a lot of you are going to be watching on there first or instead. Make sure you check out the entire podcast wherever you get your podcasts, inthemoneypodcast.com, being put one place, iTunes, et cetera, et cetera. Also, if you're here on YouTube, do us a favor, rate, review, and subscribe along the way. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornital, back with you. My voice is back. I'm back in the Brooklyn bunker, and I'm back with the man who I've done more podcasts with than anyone else in America. His name is Jonathan Kinchin. What's up, JK?
PTF. I was actually thinking about that the other day, back in the day when we used to podcast, and it was at our old office that we had in Austin. I remember it was a lot of them, and it was fond memories. Most of them. We still get you to podcast from time to time, but I like this double duty with the YouTube vids. We're going to have a ton of stuff on our YouTube channel, some YouTube exclusive stuff as well. Folks are going to want to check that out if you're usual podcast listeners. We just want to get everybody, interested in what we got going on here in the Money Media empire, because we had a really good track record these last few years in making predictions when it comes to the Breeders' Cup. Of course, you are two-time high up money finisher in the Breeders' Cup betting challenge. We're looking forward to you going one better. Yep. 2 seconds, basically canceling out anyone else's accomplishment of 2 seconds. We're the same person. We were joking off air that when at some point you had to flex. I think that was the moment in true professional wrestling fashion that you should show us off what you've been working at the gym. Oh Jesus, my fiance is nuts, man. Like 2 days, it's been tough.
That's hardcore. Oh, I love it. But we're early in the process here. We don't have past performances, so we're still going to call this the way too early Breeders' Cup prediction show. JK, let's start with your fifth prediction.
Yeah, this isn't the most going out on a limb one, but Todd Pletcher's going to win the Distaff. No, it's not bold, but I still think it's an opinion that you can make money with in terms of playing doubles, pick threes, pick fives, pick fours, pick sixes. I think if you can just use Nest and Malathot, I think you are saving yourself some equity, some money, and not using other horses like a Search Results, or we'll see what happens with some of the other ones, Latruscas and Societies and Clariers and things of that nature. I just think that one of these two horses is going to win. Nest obviously likes Keeneland, ran well there, won a grade 1 at Keeneland. How good of form is she in? She's going to continue to get better. And then Malathot, who I thought for a second was tailing off, but she's kind of back now. And if our friends Reagan Swinbank and Jake Ballish are listening, close your ears. Malathot likes Keeneland as well. And so I do think that those two horses should have no problem with the track. They have no problem with their styles. I think Malathot's going to get enough pace to close into. Nest doesn't matter. She'll go to the front or she'll come from last. I just think one of those two horses is going to win the Distaff.
Are you going to try to separate them much in your betting? I've noticed internationally shocking amounts, to my eye, enthusiasm for Nest over Malathot. They're betting it internationally almost like it's a one-horse race. I actually prefer Malathot to Nest, but I agree using them both if you can afford it is the way to go.
Yeah, I actually talked to Nick Tamero about this, who'll be making the morning line for the Breeders' Cup, and why people care about the morning line so much is beyond me. We talked about that on our last show. But I will say this, that I think Nest is going to, because she won 2 races at Saratoga, because she was the Oaks winner this year, because she ran second in the Belmont, I think she's got enough name recognition. The Rapoli, they're going to have pieces about her with Rapoli and all these things. I just feel like she'll take a little bit of that public money. The public loves a 3-year-old.
And the margins of victory, too, are the kind of thing.
Right. And so I think she'll be favored. And so, no, at this point, I will not be separating them. I'll kind of use them equally because I think that's a reflection of my opinion. I think they're equal chances of kind of winning that race. The only thing that could sway me is the week of. We know how important the workouts are. If we start hearing some, oh, my God, Nest couldn't be training any better, then Nest becomes one of those horses because of her tactical ability that maybe I would kind of upgrade a little bit. Or, oh, my God, Malathot's training like a monster. Those type of things could influence me either way, but we'll have to see what happens week of.
Let's move on to my fifth prediction, JK, and this is one that's shocking me to say out loud, but I really believe it. Rich Strike can hit the board in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Now, before you start hating, this is a horse I've been was as skeptical about as anybody after the Derby and as smug about as anybody after the failure in the Belmont. But what we've seen from this horse since And then also, more importantly, the way this race is going to be potentially shaping up, we've got a horse that we know he needs distance to show his best, and he needs a lot of pace. Well, Flightline's going to ensure that there's a lot of pace, and I don't think he can beat him, but I think Flightline can burn off all the other speed. Who's going to be running late into a second, probably a third? I think it's going to be Rich Strike. Do you give this Derby winner more respect now than you did back in May?
No, not really. I mean, yeah, he's run better. He's still not fast enough. And this actually might work out really well. AJ, I'm going to cross my fingers that if you pop up my number 4, it's the answer to Pete's number 5. Fingers crossed. Let's see. No, it's not. Almost. I was close. We'll come back to that. I thought it was going to be the other one.
We can skip ahead to your number 2, which I think will be the one. We can get that out of the way. We can go out of order. Why not?
Who cares? Let's go to number 2.
To go along.
And it just makes more sense here. Look, Taiba and Epicenter have both run 3 to 4 numbers in their career that are faster than Rich Strike has ever run. I understand Rich Strike ran well last time outside of that goofiness from the rider, but he's just not better than Epicenter or Taiba. And Taiba, in my opinion, and Epicenter are both in, no offense, better hands from a trainer standpoint. So the idea that they're going to continue to improve, that they're going to be ready for that big stage, I just feel like they're going to run better. And I think they are better horses. So it rolls right in perfectly to my number 2 is I think that Taiba or Epicenter will definitely be in the exacta. I don't think either one of them are beating Flightline, but I do think that one of those two will be in the exacta. I don't know which one. I guess maybe Epicenter kind of has the style that you would think would kind of fit well in that race with Life is Good and Flightline in there. But, it's Bob Baffert in a big race going 1.25 miles in Kentucky. You would think that Taiba could continue to improve as well. So I'm against your number 5, and I raise you my number 2 with Taiba or Epicenter.
Taiba can win the race. I mean, if everything goes right, I agree with that. But I could also see a scenario where, because he's a serious win contender and because of his running style, that he maybe makes one of those early moves that gets him gassed and allows the likes of Epicenter and also Rich Strike to come just for third. That's my idea. But I definitely respect Epicenter, and I respect your idea on some horizontal play of having both the 3-year-olds, whereas I don't think Rich Strike can win the race. I think either of the 3-year-olds, if, it's horse racing, things can go wrong. I'm going to mostly play the race like Flightline is nailed on, but there's a world in which either of your horses could not only fill out the exacta, but win.
Yeah, and a little preview for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. The last couple of years, I've hit doubles in the last 2 late races to get to those second places. I think I'll be able to do that as well. We'll talk a little bit more about the turf. I think I'll be able to do that this year with an opinion I have in the turf into Flightline. I don't care. I mean, everyone can know what I'm going to do. If I have whatever I have going into that double, it's going to all be bet. So there's no secret there. But if for whatever reason I can't work out the value in that double, I will go to the exacta pool in the classic with Flightline on top, with a little Epicenter and Taiba in second, with an all-in push. I'd have no problem with that at all.
Let's move on. We've gone semi out of order here, but let's get back into order with your number 4 that went up before, that concerns the sprint. A horse whose name starts with Jack will win the sprint. Now, my first question when I saw this is, I was pretty sure that Jack Christopher was going to go in the dirt mile. It sounds like you think he's going to go in the sprint. You think he can give Jackie's Warrior a race, if not just beat him outright.
Yeah, I don't know for sure what they're going to do. I know that there has been some conversations where, I think Chad was kind of interested in trying the sprint. I do know there's other conversations where the mile makes sense. The thing about it for me, and this is just a little bit kind of on a tangent, I just don't really see – look, I've never bred a horse, but from a stallion perspective and like looking at it the way that we have, just being big fans of the game, it just makes more sense to me for Jack, for his stallion career, to win the 6 furlong sprint than it does to win the 2-turn, short stretch, short run to the first turn mile at Keeneland. He's already won the Champagne. He's already won the Pat Day Mile. He's already won the Jerkins. What else does he need to prove about being a middle distance horse? I don't think there's anything left to prove. But I think beating the likes of Jackie's Warrior in a 6 furlong sprint in a Grade 1 in Lexington, to me, that means more to Jack as a stallion. So that was kind of my thought. And I think that he can win that race as well. What we saw him do in the Woody Stevens, what we saw him do in the Jerkins, those are 2 performances that I think suggest that he can win the sprint. And I think maybe the cutback might even help a little bit. I was never really on the bandwagon. He didn't want to go longer, but I definitely have no problem with him going shorter. He's that brilliant of a horse. And then, Jackie's Warrior, I forgive his performance in the forego. I feel like a lot of people feel that he didn't run his best race. I actually think he did run an outstanding race that day. I just think that Cody's Wish ran extremely well. So I think I'm going to give Jack another shot going 6 furlongs. He just needs to draw outside. If he can draw outside Jackie's Warrior, I think he could win that race too. So I think a horse named Jack will win the sprint. And if Jack Christopher doesn't go in there, then this opinion is going to have to lie on the shoulders of Jackie's Warrior only.
And it doesn't sound like you'd be that disappointed if it comes down to that, which is
I wouldn't. I think that Jackie's Warrior, it'd be a shame if all of Jackie's Warrior's accomplishments were not capped off with a Breeders' Cup Sprint win. He's can go down as one of the greatest sprinters we've seen with his accomplishments. I think a grade 1 at Saratoga like 3 years in a row or 4 years in a row or something of that nature. 3 in a row. I think he deserves it to have it on his resume. And so I'm hopeful that he will.
Let's move on to my fourth idea, which is another one of these. Maybe it's not going to really shock people too much who've been paying attention to the exploits of Charlie Appleby in North America over the last few years. I think he's going to win 3 separate Breeders' Cup races, and I think they will probably be the Juvenile Turf with Silver Knot, who we know is going to be the one representing him in here. I think he's going to win the Turf with one of his runners who's going there, Rebels Romance, or the talented 3-year-old Nation's Pride. And then I think the mile in Modern Games. I mean, I feel like he ran a big race the other day. I kind of wish they'd stuck to what I thought was the plan and just gone right to the Breeders' Cup Mile, but I didn't see anything to put me off of him. I still think he is going to be the one to win at the Breeders' Cup this year, where you can actually cash your ticket this time. What's your general thought on these Appleby shippers? How are you going to approach it?
I'm excited to hear you talk a little bit more about them. I'm not going to say much, kind of like when Maggie's talking about 2-year-olds. I just need to shut up and listen. Tell me a little bit, obviously when I look at these races, I start thinking about how I'm going to play the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Where are my pushes and where are my strong opinions? Where are my tosses? We'll get to one of them in a little bit, so we'll save the turf. But as far as the Juvenile and the Juvenile Turf or the Juvenile Turf and the is concerned, tell me a little bit about that horse. Is it a special horse or just the best he's sending over?
I think he's the best he's sending over is more like it. We saw Mysterious Night and how good he was in Toronto, and the fact that he's electing to send over this Silver Knot who's getting good at the right time, excellent form as a 2-year-old, and really looked to turn a corner last time. I think this is, we'll see. We have time to look at all the numbers and really shape this up from a numbers perspective. But, this early in the process for me, this is just a horse, the money that's been around for him, the decision to send him here. I think you want to make him the first horse you look at when you're looking at the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, if nothing else. So that much I can assure you from this far out. I think we should switch the order since we went out of order before. We'll go out of order here and give me another one. Let's go to my number 3 before we get to JK's number 3. And this is one this is divorced from any pick at this point. It's just a general idea. For contest players will appreciate this. It's based a little bit on the history of the race and a little bit from what I've seen of this group of 2-year-old fillies. I think this is a great race to fish for what contest players would call a cap horse, 20-1 or better in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Look, I like what I've seen from Chocolate Gelato, certainly. She's cool. But it just doesn't feel like a year where I'm going to want to get wedded to anything at a short price. I think it's a wide open race, and I'm going to be looking, at least with a lot of my play, to shoot for the stars in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. I think we're going to see a 20-1 winner in the race. Jonathan, do you have any early thoughts on the Juvenile Fillies?
That Prank would have won this race by a mile. Chocolate Gelato ran so fast at Saratoga, and she got a fast number, then she came back and ran slow. And then even Wonder Wheel, who I thought was pretty impressive, didn't run particularly fast either. So your idea here of trying to find a big price horse in a race that doesn't have a standout, it makes a ton of sense. It seems kind of, intuitive, like, of course, there's horses that don't make sense on the top of the market. Let's not look for something underneath. My concern is that for whatever reason, that Chocolate Gelato or Wonder Wheel will take that step forward and kind of be those horses we kind of thought they were going to be. If that happens, obviously one of them will win, but I'm not doing that. I'm not taking that proposition at a short price. So I'm with you on this one, trying to look for a horse to kind of lean on at a big price.
All right, let's do your third next. This is another one where the first part of it, I think people are going to be like, duh. And then the second part of it, I think is a little bit more interesting. JK, I'll let you read this one.
Yeah. I feel like Chad's got a really good shot to get his fifth filly and mare turf here. And it's a horse that has beaten me twice in a row, a horse that I kind of thought was a secondary horse. And I think the horse was probably a little bit of a second tier horse until they got the bright idea to send an Italian to the lead. She was impressive in the Diana. She was impressive in the First Lady. And I think going that mile and 3/16 even a little bit further, she's going to be even more dangerous because she's going to be able to make her own trip. She's going to get comfortable on the front end. Joelle's got a ton of confidence in her after her last 2 wins. And Chad now is training her to be a horse that will get out on the front end, relax, and then finish. I think it could be Day at the Spa 2.0, wire to wire, Chad Brown, the filly mare turf.
It's hard to argue with you. I mean, this for me is a race. Let's see who comes over from Europe before I, commit to any opinion. But I'm not leaving an Italian out based on what I've seen from her in exotic plays. I can assure you of that. Let's get to my number 2. We're going to see Cave Rock as one of the biggest favorites throughout the 2 days of the Breeders' Cup. I think Loggins is going to avoid the danger zone. See what I did there? And win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So impressed with how this horse ran. I think he's going to be a square price between the horse that vanquished him, the multiple grade winner, Forte, being in there. And of course, I mean, I don't see a world in which Cave Rock isn't long odds on in this spot. Is this a race, JK, where you can see my point, or might you, and it's been in mothballs in the back of the closet for a long time, but might you get out the silver wig?
Oh, the wig's out, baby. I just washed my Baffert t-shirt just now. Yeah, I mean, I've said this before in these situations because it's an early Breeders' Cup play for me, and it doesn't really change. It doesn't matter if people know I'm doing it or not, what it turns into, because I've got 20 other races in between then. This will be an all-in play for me on Cave Rock. If I can find something before and after, it'll be doubles. If it has to be a win bet, it'll be a win bet, but it'll be an all-in wager for me on Cave Rock. Just too fast. I like Loggins as a horse, and I like Loggins moving forward, but I think on the first Friday in November, it's going to be Cave Rock.
Let me give you one caveat, if you don't mind, unsolicited advice, which is generally a faux pas in horse racing. Watch him work / listen to people you respect. Watch him work the week of, because I feel like we've seen some of these Baffert 2-year-olds come in there the week of and sort of tout themselves with antics in the morning. I mean, if Cave Rock is training better than he's ever trained, go for your life, do it. But he's shown enough to me in his races that just, I wonder if he is going to be capable of taking that step forward in the farthest test yet. So that's my only note.
Yeah. And the one to your point, the one that I think probably, and I don't even know if you know this is who you're talking about, but 8 Rings was one of those horses where he wasn't nearly as fast as Cave Rock. He wasn't nearly as dominant as Cave Rock. He wasn't running the figures. He wasn't as consistent, but you're right. I mean, all of these opinions are reserved. I think Breeders' Cup is one of those times where you have the best opportunity to hear about how horses are training. It's because a lot of times we get these clocker reports, it's one person's opinion. But when it's Breeders' Cup week, you get to hear 6, 7, 8 opinions. And there's, you can hear kind of, Cave Rock's been working like a monster. You hear it from farm manager here. You hear it from a trainer here that doesn't train the horse. You hear it from, old jockeys. You hear it. So when you hear, you're like, okay, now I know. And that's what happened with 8 Rings. Everyone said 8 Rings was working poorly. Everyone. Unfortunately, Dennis's moment is still running.
Yeah, that's right. He was working great, and it didn't work out for him, as we found out in ignominious fashion. Just a couple of minutes left, but I think we can actually do these pretty quickly. These are races we're going to be coming back to time and time again. We'll go with mine first. I want to end on yours. We'll go with mine. We'll go back to Appleby-related stuff here. You could say that a couple of mine are correlated, so maybe they don't count for as much. But Breeders' Cup Turf, my number 1 prediction here. It's not that I don't like Warlike Goddess. I respect her immensely. but I still think the move in the Breeders' Cup turf is to play this for an international 1, 2, 3. And it remains to be seen exactly who's going to show up. But I think these European invaders have a great chance to run 1, 2, 3. You've got the 2 Applebys who are coming in, Rebels Romance and Nation's Pride. It sounds very realistic that the Champion Stakes winner, Bay Bridge, is going to be making an appearance. Those 3 alone. And then you throw in Mishriff, who I feel like has already shown himself to be a true international superstar. What a way for him to go out with a big run in the turf. With those 4 in there, it might be hard for Warlike Goddess, as good as she is, to make the frame. She could run her race and run fourth to that quartet of runners. JK, feel free to piggyback onto that or go right to your number 1.
No, I mean, one of my points was going to be, one of my top 5 we were talking last night was Warlike Goddess will get beat. And I'm going to stick with that opinion. And to be fair, it kind of worked out. I was a little bit frustrated she ran against the boys last time because I wanted to try to beat her. And I wanted to try to beat her where I had some value. I didn't think last time presented much value. I tried to beat her with Gufo. I'm divorced from him again. And then she won. But now I think it actually worked out even better for me in the long run for this opinion, because she's beaten the boys. Now they're going to really think she can beat the boys. It's still an American market. They're going to bet her. And I'd be shocked if she's not the first or second choice, especially because they're going to do a bunch of features on her and all these things. They're going to run her and say her and Goldakova's name in the same sentence. And it's going to be a great opportunity. Let's just keep this in mind. The reason she was so dominant against the girls is because the girls aren't very good. And no offense to Peter Brandt, Virginia Joy, and Chad Brown, but she got beat by Virginia Joy. I don't care what the circumstances are of a race. If you lose to Virginia Joy, you're not beating 4 good Euros in a 1.5-mile turf race. I just don't care. I don't care what the excuse is. And Gufo, like he's suddenly this amazing American turf horse.
We need to talk about Gufo, JK, because you had famously said on our airwaves that you made a big thing about signing the papers and all this. And a listener pointed this out. And I wish I could give him credit. But, you made this big point about it. The divorce papers were signed. And then the next race comes up. And what do? But you pick Gufo one more time. Well, you got what's reserved on that one. And it has been suggested that Gufo may take out a restraining order against you.
Lafitte and I joked about this on the show where I said, yes, Gufo and I are divorced, but we're meeting for coffee to see if we can try to figure something out. And that coffee did not go well. And look, I didn't have a choice, I didn't have a choice. I was trying to – it's like I had a +1 for a wedding. I didn't want to go by myself, so I was like, Gufo, do you want to go? I didn't have a choice in that situation because I wanted to try to beat Warlike Goddess, and there's no one in there to beat her with except for Gufo, and he let me down. So anyway, I just don't think she's as good as she's going to get credit for, and I think there's going to be an opportunity to beat her. Even if she's a second choice, I still think there's value.
Your number 1 prediction is up on the screen. Let's deal with it and wrap this section of the show.
Yeah, I just think he's going to run a faster. Not only do I think he's going to win, I think he's going to run a faster figure than he ran.
There are audio listeners too, so read it out for us.
Yeah. Flightline will run faster than the 126 from the Pacific Classic, the 126 buyer speed figure he earned. If you're new to the game, speed figures very similar to a quarterback rating. The higher, the better. The faster they ran. I just think he's going to run faster because I do believe this will be his last race, despite, some of the things that they've suggested that maybe he'll run next year. I just think he's worth too much money to do that. Unfortunately, I think this will be his last race. So you're not going to see Flavian kind of saving for the next situation. The other situation is that he's going to have a target, I think, in Life is Good. I don't see Life is Good sitting outside of him and trying to rate. Todd Pletcher's too smart for that. He's not going to run by that horse. Maybe try to get him off the bridle, get him uncomfortable. So he'll be sucked along by a talented horse in Life is Good. Then he'll be pushed to finish with real horses like Taiba and Epicenter running at him. I think you're going to get that top performance. The other thing is, talking to a lot of trainers, those West Coast dirt tracks are still a little bit looser than normal. And I think a fall Keeneland track is going to be tighter, and I think it's going to allow him to really, really run. And I think he's going to run a faster speed figure than he did in the Pacific Classic.
Great stuff, JK. Appreciate you. We're going to wrap this segment. If you're listening on podcast form, if you're on YouTube, there's going to be a lot more videos right behind this one. And we encourage you, if you want even more content, to go over to inthemoneypodcast.com/plus and check that out.